and then give your perspective on this topic, that'd be great. So, yeah, so thank you for joining my office hours. Um, Joan, would you like to just quickly introduce yourself?
Okay, my name's Joan Shen. I'm a resident of Palo Alto on 214 East Charleston Road.
Okay. Do you have a perspective on the grade separations?
Yes, I am actually against the fact that they are doing the underground pass, which created a roundabout on our street, which as a result will actually affect many residents and also displace some of the homes, the owners of the home, and they are very anxious, and we are in support of them. We hope that they don't have to move.
Okay, great. Um, Sabrina, do you want to quickly introduce yourself and also the your perspective?
Yeah, so I actually am very new. I am a almost 40-year resident of Palo Alto. I actually own a property on Star King Circle. And I actually was not aware of any of these issues until my tenant, because I live in a different part of Palo Alto, said, "Did you know that 40% of your entire property is going to be taken away?" And so that was just about a couple of weeks ago that I started to look at this and I've learned a little bit more about the underpass and hybrid solution. I know that a lot of residents have already talked about the cost differences between the two, as well as properties impacted in one but not the other. But I actually want to focus on some of the traffic items that is outlined in the comparison matrix published by the city. So I'd like to have a little bit of time to walk through those.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you both for joining. This is, definitely one of the major decisions in our city. And I for one don't think that we should be taking people's property to these grade separations. If you guys follow me, I've been advocating that we underground Caltrain because in our city, land values are very high. And if you look at anywhere else in the world, like Hong Kong or anywhere where there's like high property values, they never put mass transit above ground. And whenever you have like the number of dollars per square foot that we have, or pretty much any, high density area has, you always underground it. And that would basically be safer, quieter. Um, and I actually don't think it's going to be that much more expensive because of the fact that I think when you take people's property, people are not going to like it and they're going to fight tooth and nail. And if you think about the litigation and time that's involved, um, I don't necessarily know it's going to be cheaper. And it's also very divisive, right? So you're telling some people that you have to take their house or their property, right? Or part of the property. And I just don't think that's going to fly in our city. But yeah, I would love to hear more about your guys' perspective. Who'd like to go first?
Do you mind if I walk fairly quickly through the comparison matrix?
Sure,
And is it okay if am I allowed to share my screen?
absolutely. Please do.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to bring up and let me know if you can see because the font is quite small.
I can see
Uh,
it.
can you see the words actually?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you look at these, I'm just talk about these three, right? Which is really around traffic,
Yeah.
facilitate movement across the corridor, reduce delay for car traffic, and then safe routes for pedestrians and bicycles, right? So if you look at the underpass solution over here, um, I the turning movements from Meadow. Basically, you will no longer, if you do the underpass, you will no longer be able to go towards Mountain View if you're on Meadow. Basically, it's prohibited, right? And if you're going from Mountain View to movements from North, okay. So if you want to go, south on Alma Street from northbound, you actually have to take a left if you're going right. If you want to go to Meadow, you would have to take a left you have to come up and take a left U-turn at the light at Alma Village, right? And then go down the ramp underneath on Meadow in order to turn right or left. So that's very complicated for people. And then on Charleston, you have the circles, right? So people have talked about the traffic circles. You can't turn right if you're coming from, let's say, Foothill on Charleston to Middlefield. You can't you can't turn right down to Mountain View at all unless you go down and do the roundabout. You have the same problem in 3 different directions. So, you know, if you sort of look at this, it's more complex. And, you know, to be fair, the city also rates that as, you know, not as good, right? So then if you look at the car only, they basically, you know, talk about the same thing, right? Basically with cars, you have this complex U-turn, right? You know, in turning movements are prohibited, which is the turn, you cannot go from either side of Meadow to go towards Mountain View. So you have to move to Charleston or you have to move to Loma Verde, where there's no light, and God forbid they add another light, and then Loma Verde will turn into another throughway, right? And then at the, you know, Alma Charleston intersection, as we talked about, there's, you know, 3 different places where you cannot turn normally. You have to go through the roundabout. Okay, so but what is more concerning for me is really the bikes, right? So I think on the surface, having the underpass and having a grade separation for bikes and cyclists that is separated from the train traffic above or the car traffic below sounds pretty good, right? But that grade separation is, I don't know how much it is, but it's only for a small segment. So imagine you're a gun student, and I think half of gun lives on the other side of the tracks from where gun is. So if you're a cyclist, if you're a kid, a teenager, biking home from gun, right? Let me show you this picture. Biking, you know, biking home from gun.
I can't see your screen. You're only sharing your slide right now, the PDF.
I am right. I thought I'm sharing. Okay, so hold on. Let me do a different share. Stop share and then reshare. Sorry, I thought that I share an app, but I guess I'm only sharing a screen. So you see it now? This is just I just drew these line on top. So if you're coming home from gun, which happens every day, right? For lots of students, they would go down the ramp. They go on the bike path here because this is the correct way to go. But then when they get just before they hit the tracks, they have to go up a ramp to a pedestrian overpass and then back down that ramp. And then at this area, so I'll try to zoom in even more, right? There's a fence over here protecting the down ramp, and then make this very tight U-turn to get on the 2-way bike path that is currently being designed. Now, if you actually live on the other side of the traffic circle, you would actually have to, you know, obviously at some point, if you can see my cursor, you have to go back on this side of the road, right? And you would have to do that based on this description. You would have to cross Charleston to get on, then cross Charleston again at the roundabout, which means that you're going to be contending with cars, not at a light, but with cars going on a roundabout to get onto the right and south side of, oh, sorry, I need to keep doing this back and forth.
Or you can share your whole screen. That might make it easier.
Yeah. So if you look here, right, it says, right, you have to do all this stuff, right? You have to go on one side of the street, down the other side of the street, and you're gonna have to and then you have to cross Charleston again at the roundabout with the cars, without a light and without a walk signal, to get back onto the right side of the road. So if you sort of look at this, it's a very, very awkward design. So, I just think that, we haven't even thought about that, right? Because we've been focused on the cost and the, property, but just the design is just very awkward compared to the hybrid model, which doesn't go underground, like you say, but it lifts it up, right? And that maintains a standard traditional four-way intersection. So if you have a standard four-way intersection, yes, there might be people crossing the street on Alma, and I was told that that means that traffic light continues to be rated as an F, and if you didn't have a light, then it would be rated as a B. But the reality is, does the traffic light rating looked at, in an overall cumulative view on how the traffic flow is going to be interrupted? So I just don't know if that is looked at. The other thing is, I actually talked to Mayor Greer Stone this morning, and I guess he and you are a similar age. Like, I never imagined, but what he said, he wondered out loud. He goes, well, I wonder if it's so much of a bother. If I were a gun student, I might just go on the underpass with the cars, because in California, I can do that, right? And the city can't do anything about it. So all the intent to make it safer could end up, because you have teenagers who will be teenagers, we may jeopardize their safety even more by having this convoluted design. So I just wanted to bring that up because I haven't heard other people bring that up.
Thank you, Sabrina. By the way, I just want to welcome, I guess, Michelle and Gary. We're talking about the Great Separation, and Sabrina just talked about the issue with bikes with the Great Separation. And then I was going to give Joan a chance to kind of say a few words, but maybe before I do you guys want to just quickly introduce yourself and give your perspective on this topic, and then we'll let Joan talk, then you guys could go. Does that sound okay?
Sure.
Yes, thank you.
Just to introduce ourselves, so Michelle and Gary Gibson, we're at 119 Seal Avenue, and we have a duplex behind our house too. And we just learned about this 10 days ago or so, and just had some concerns we wanted to share.
Okay. Joan, do you want to go next?
Yes, okay. My concern is mostly because the hybrid, the biggest concern they raised was because it's not a I guess separated enough grade intersection. You have to maintain a signal to allow all four-way traffic to go past. But in my mind, that's a normal way of transport for everybody. Like Sabrina had mentioned, the kids, they would just take the easy way, and with these convoluted circles or different grade for bike or pedestrian, it may not serve its purpose like intended, and we go through all these trouble creating this problem. I mean, eventually it may become a problem. I think the simplest solution would just make it simple. If we just getting rid of the train being in the way, we move the train somehow. We don't create additional problems, to maintain the project doable and accomplishable, rather than creating another dimension and making everybody so anxious. And most of all is because all the properties are being affected, and it's not okay. That's all I have to say.
Okay, great. Thank you, Joan. Gary, Michelle, do you guys want to say, kind of give more depth to your perspective?
Sure. Yeah. We're calling primarily because of what's been being proposed for bike and pedestrian underpass at Seal Avenue, which is something that, well, first of all, we just heard about and found out none of our neighbors were aware of it until very recently. So we would like to learn more about it. But from what we've heard, we have a lot of concerns. I mean, first, we're concerned that it will severely negatively impact our neighborhood in a variety of ways, both in terms of safety, in terms of how easy it is to get in and out of our driveway, property values, so on and so forth. We also are not at all convinced that it's necessary. There's already a pedestrian underpass at Cal Ave, which is only 3.5 blocks away. And if you put one in at Seal Avenue, then kids that are trying to, my understanding is that the idea is it makes it safer for kids to get to Pali High. you're still going to have to put something in really high. You're still going to have to put something in to get them across Churchill, which is going to have even more traffic in the future. So it's going to be very expensive to add another pedestrian underpass close to one that already exists, and then have to add an additional one. So, I think this whole thing sounds like it's not the best solution. And also one point I'd like to raise, nobody can predict the future, but places like McKinsey and the American Highway Institute and so forth are predicting that by the time that these changes are implemented, and the last I heard, we're talking the early 2030s, um, there'll be a huge penetration of self-driving cars in the market, which completely will change traffic patterns. It'll completely change the best ways to deal with, getting cars across the railroad and getting, bikes and pedestrians across the railroad. And I think there'll be solutions that don't require damaging so many neighborhoods. If you're going to, for example, damage the intersection, the people around the intersection of Churchill and Alma, you should only damage the fewest places you can. And I think with a lot of autonomous cars, which by that time, or soon after that, will be much safer, there will be solutions where you can have pedestrian, a separate pedestrian and bike path combined there that works efficiently without having to ruin our neighborhood and do it and do something else at Churchill to get all those bikes across Churchill over to Pali. It just doesn't make any sense at all to me to put a pedestrian underpass in its seal, given what the future probably looks like, and given the existence already of underpass very close by. Kids aren't going to go backwards away from Pali also to come, to use this underpass. So all the neighborhood that's closer to Pali than Seal Avenue, they're going to be heading over towards Churchill to get across. So if anything, you should implement a way for them to cross over there and for pedestrians to cross. Anyway, I don't know what you want to add to that, Michelle, but
Yeah, I think they're going to be crossing at Churchill, so it makes sense to make the best solution there. Especially we have, Cal Ave just 3.5 blocks away. I was just appalled to learn of this just recently, and that it was somehow approved as the proposal, and we would lose our trees, we would lose the parking. The parking's really important. The trees really help make the neighborhood. It's not clear how you would get in our driveway because we have to swing out to kind of turn in. You can't, it's a sharp turn, and if the tunnel's right in front of our house, I don't know how
there's
that's
not going to
gonna
be
get
any
in
easy
our-
way to access it,
Um,
and you're not going to be able to choose which way to go if you can get in and out at all.
But I did really want to thank you for having office hours,
Yes.
Mr. Tanaka. That, I mean, you were the only person in the council that had publicly available. You could go to the website and book something. And I appreciated you after I wrote my 2-page letter, kind of reaching out right away. That really meant a lot to me. So
Yeah, absolutely.
if you have, yeah.
Well,
Some-
I believe in order to represent the people of the city, you have to understand the perspectives, and that's why I have this office hours, because I can hear perspective from the constituents, and um, I've had a lot of office hours on this topic, and almost universally nobody's happy. I mean, it seems like a very complicated, expensive plan, um, and and frankly, actually, there's no money for it either. So, we're kind of alarming a lot of people, and some people are concerned about just resale value of the house because they have this thing hanging over their head now. And the funny thing is that there's no money. The city's actually broke. We're losing money this year. We're gonna lose money next year. We're gonna lose money the year after. We're gonna lose money for like 4 years or 5 years in a row. So we're running a budget deficit right now. And there's zero money for this at all, unless, the state, which is also having lots of problems, right? So they're not gonna have money either. Now, I suppose the federal government, they print a lot of money, so maybe they'll print money and give it to us. I don't know. But right now, there's no funding for this either, right? So some of it is a little bit premature. But I do actually like your comment, Gary, about self-driving cars. Like if you look at full self-driving, like from Tesla, it's pretty friggin' incredible, right? I mean, the full self-driving 12, people for a long time have been talking about self-driving, and it seems to be taking forever, but it seems like it's almost here, if not here already.
Yeah, and it will be here. I mean, it's not just me saying that. You can go online and look at predictions by experts who've looked at this. It's going to happen, and it will be safer than
And it will help Churchill when
human drivers. And
Well, it already is actually. So in the latest Tesla report, so Tesla reports the numbers every quarter,
yeah,
and the latest report, self-driving cars are 11 times more safe than humans. That means a self-driving car can drive 11 times the number of miles as a human before getting into an accident, right? So it's
yeah,
already 10 over 10x, right? 11x safer.
yeah.
So it makes you wonder, do we use this, the train is over a century old, right? It's a super old technology, right? And it makes you wonder, are we planning for the future or are we planning for the past?
Exactly. You can find studies out there as well where people have looked at things like the cost effectiveness of the bullet train that, we're supposedly building through the central part of the state versus fleets of self-driving small buses that are all driving in close proximity. So it's very aerodynamic, very fuel efficient, and energetically, it's much more efficient than the train. It's much more fungible. You can adjust how many, buses you have in these convoys and stuff like that. So I don't believe that the bullet train is going to connect in any meaningful way with Caltrain. And part of the planning that I heard when I went to the last meeting on this, people were talking about what part of the impetus for making all these changes is the possibility that the bullet train will connect to Caltrain and increase the traffic on the line. I mean, I know there are other reasons why the traffic might increase, but I think all these trains are going to be a thing of the past.
Sure.
By the time any of this can happen, it's going to be, and I'm sure 2031, which is the year I heard being thrown around at that meeting, is optimistic at this point. I know that it's already been delayed many times. So, a decade from now, when this might happen, it's not going to be something we want anymore.
Sure. Sabrina, did you want to say a few words?
Yeah, I just want to comment the fact that, I totally agree with all the comments. But actually there is potentially that there is potentially damage done today, right? Because all the addresses that may be potentially impacted by all of these various projects are published.
Yeah.
Right. And so
Yeah.
you already, and even if they ultimately don't happen, the longer we delay making the decision of not doing it or doing something different that doesn't impact or impact much less, all that period, the people that are sitting in those houses,
Yeah.
that own those houses, already are experiencing problems.
I absolutely agree. And I heard someone commenting that they had talked to a real estate agent about selling their home. And the real estate agent saw that it was on one of these maps and refused to try to sell it.
Yeah, you have to disclose it, right? You have to disclose it, otherwise it's a liability. So it's going to hurt resale values, right? It's like an axe over everyone's head, right? And I've been actually you guys might have heard that Palo Alto has this program called Link, which is like an Uber-like service to
Yeah.
Yep.
we're losing our shirt on it. But anyways, one of the things I was pushing for was for us to partner up with Tesla. So Tesla, their engineering headquarters is still in Palo Alto, and they've been talking about a taxi service coming out in August. And for me, I think Palo Alto is supposed to be a city of technology of the future, right? And I for one would love to make it easier, let's say for Tesla to have Palo Alto be a test bed, right? Because um, I think because of just the nature of self-driving cars, it could be deploy a lot faster. And technology, I think, is pretty much here. I mean, right now it's safer than humans.
Yeah.
And maybe all this fuss is for naught, right? Maybe what we should do is just speed up, make it easier for them to do self-driving.
Yes.
And then maybe you don't need to worry about all these crazy expensive infrastructure changes, which you know, are going to wipe out neighborhoods, right? I mean, it's going to wipe out a bunch of houses at lots of different intersections, and it's going to create this super complex. I'm a big biker, so I bike pretty much everywhere. It's going to create this super complex bike route, right? Which, you know, that's one sure way to make people not want to bike, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, and the funny thing, we have no money for it either. So it's kind of like why create all this fuss, right? Without a real need. So you know, for me, I think we could probably delay it. Or if we're gonna do something, let's really underground the Caltrain when it has no, and you know, and we don't have, we could plan for that because at least nobody's house is gonna be wiped out. And if and when the money comes, we could do it. But what we might find is that self-driving in a few years may be, you know, like for me, I was thinking if I was to buy another car, I'd probably buy a Tesla just because it has self-driving now, right? I don't want to have to drive myself. And so, and you know, other car makers are also going to get this, right? And so all this, you know, century-old technology makes you wonder, you know, like what are we doing here? Um, does anyone have any other thoughts or comments? We have another couple minutes here, but I want to give people a chance to ask questions or you know, give a perspective.
Well, so you know, like it sounds like you're basically your perspective is, well, let's just, you know, push out the project, not consider
Well,
anything.
not so much push up. We have to make a decision. I would just say let's underground it. You know, we don't
Okay,
have money for that
take
either, but
underground, right?
just let's underground it because that way nobody's house gets wiped out, right? Because a lot of the other options, people's houses get wiped out, and unnecessarily, we don't even have money to do any of the grade separations. Not a single one of them.
Right. So
So
yeah, yeah, yep. So you know, I think that that would be great. I mean, it just seems like the Rail Commission is recommending the hybrid or the underpass options, at least at the Meadow. This is not Seal or Churchill, but the city has also prioritized Meadow and Charleston as higher than anything in North Palo Alto. So if you look at the Meadow and Charleston, the hybrid solution does not impact any houses, and it's almost $400 million cheaper. And
Still a
does not
lot of money.
have the routes.
Yeah.
So I don't understand why we're considering an underpass that costs more. It costs way more when we don't
yeah,
have money.
and those budget estimates are optimistic. So when it really
Right.
happens, it's going to
Well, but
cost us probably
then if
50%
we
more.
continue
Right.
with both options,
Yeah.
right, for the next 12 to 18 months to move to the next phase, that means all the people in those houses are gonna have to deal with the market devaluation,
Yeah.
even if ultimately decide otherwise.
Yeah. And also the litigation. I mean, the other thing that people don't consider is all the litigation that's going to happen, right? And it will happen, right? Because nobody's going to just say, oh, take my house, no problem, right? It's not like China, right? People are not going to be happy with that. And so there's going to be lots of litigation, lots of delays, right? So it just seems
So is
like
there a reason why they're still considering
you know,
option?
you know, my colleagues have different perspectives than I do. But you know, I think it seems like to be the least worst in their perspective, but I don't think it is. I think it's too. I think if we do it, we should do it right, which is basically just underground Caltrain. It's crazy expensive. I get that, but so are all these other solutions. And if you factor in the litigation costs and delays because of that, it's about the same, right? So and I do agree with Gary about the self-driving technology. It's gone so good. So I just wonder, like, we should just pick a solution that doesn't cause so much disruption. And if we get the money, then we just do it right. So why tear up all these neighborhoods? But my colleagues are like, it's just, you know, just a few neighborhoods get affected. What's a big deal? But I mean, it's not their houses, right? So
With their houses, they have a different attitude.
yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I would if I was my house, I'd be very upset, right? I would not like it at all. I mean, some
But
people live,
I mean, I can even say, right, forget about the people that are affected. Is it actually a better solution, right? So
I don't
for
think it
example,
is.
Gary and
No,
Michelle are saying, okay, well, are they going to actually use that bike path? Or
yeah,
is that going to force them to do something else to get to Pali? Or in our case, it's like, okay, if you have to do this convoluted thing, are you actually creating more danger for kids that are going to bypass the convoluted U-turns that they have to do to get home from Gun
yeah,
and actually go on the underpass with the cars? And, you know, kids are kids.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They're going to
Yeah.
do that, and it's going to be more